So here we're going to continue where we left off. So if we can just remember or recall what we were doing prior. So we were doing discrete random variables and probability distributions, where if we were given an experiment within many experiments, and if we add the probabilities up, it would add to 1. And every probability in the probability distribution has to be between 0 and 1. And so here we talked about the mean and how this is the mean of a discrete random variable or a probability distribution is really the expected value of the experiment in the long run. Like in the long run, what can I expect to happen? And so we did some with probability, some fun betting, and then some with an insurance company with life insurance policy. And the one thing I want you to recall is always ask, like, which perspective does it come from? Recall, like, one was from the player's perspective, and then our insurance policy was from the company's perspective. So just when you're doing homework, make sure that you first ask, like, whose perspective, and then kind of calculate the win and losses or life or death values according to the perspective. So the last thing we can talk about is standard deviation, because we can always see and talk about the spread and how the average distance from that mean. So you can see from these formulas, they're pretty intense. We would need a table to subtract and square and multiply, but we're not going to do that here. We're going to go ahead and just calculate the mean and standard deviation with our calculators. So I went ahead and took the Netflix example here, and we can go ahead and compute the variance and the standard deviation of the discrete probability. So what we would want to do is we want to go ahead and we're going to go ahead and put in the calculator. So we'll put X in list 1 and P, the probability, in list 2, and run a 1 var stats where list 2 will act like our frequency list. So if we go to our calculator, let's go ahead and go to stat and go to edit. And I'll go ahead and put those Netflix table in. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 0, 1. And then the probabilities that correspond to each, I guess, streamed movie. And then we'll go ahead and run a 1 var stat. So go to stat and go to calc, 1 var stat. The X's are list 1. The frequency list is our probabilities, which is list 2, and then we can hit calculate. And we can see the average is 1.49, and that's what we got last time anyways when we did it by hand. And then notice the standard deviation is given to a sigma. It doesn't even take a sample because it recognizes that it's a probability. And so the standard deviation with respect to the probability distribution is 0.93. And I rounded, the movies are in whole numbers, so I just rounded to 2 decimal, but really appropriately we would round the mean to 1.5 and then the standard deviation to 0.9. Okay, and if I wanted to interpret, I would interpret the same way as I usually would and say this means that the average number of movies streamed is 1.5 movies, 1.5 movies, give or take zero point 0.9 movies.